Hello and welcome to Evansville Podcast. My name is Jason. Thanks for listening. Hey, I wanted to give a quick note about something happening this weekend before we get into the UE men's soccer talk with head coach Marshall Ray, assistant coach Ian Henry, and Big Cat Josh Pietrowski. So before we get into that, there is something going on this weekend. It's the 43rd annual Frog Follies. So it's put on by the Evil Iron Street Rod Club. And it is like I said, it's the 43rd annual Frog Follies. It's more than 4,000 souped up street rods from across the country. They'll be out at the Vandenberg County 4-H Center Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And the public is invited to see the classic cars. Then they're vintage 1948 and older. It's from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. Friday, 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. Saturday, and 8 a.m. to 1 p.m. Sunday. Looks like the mayor's going to be there for the closing ceremonies. And so Frog Follies is one of the Midwest's largest charity events. A portion of each admission is donated to local nonprofit organizations, including Easter Seals. So, check it out. More specifically, why I'm talking about this. So there is a celebrity frog race Saturday, August 26th, at 3:15 p.m. Local celebrities will encourage frogs to cross the finish line at the industrial building. And as it happens, I have been asked to be one of the frog racers. So, we're bringing home the gold. This is the year of the podcast. So, first place, I'm not sure if it's gold or I forget. I'm sure there's some sort of cash award that I'll have to split with the frog. But come and check us out, 3:15 Saturday, August 26th, Celebrity Frog Races. Yeah, Frog Follies. Be there. Now, on to the reason you're here. Some talk about UE's men's soccer program. Welcome to Evansville Podcast, gentlemen. Marshall Ray, Ian Henry, UE men's soccer, and it's Big Cat.
Big Cat. Everybody knows Big Cat is Big Cat might be Evansville's biggest sports fan, and just in terms of sport in itself. So I'm here to provide whatever help I can.
You've got to know that a nickname sticks when you read it in the Courier Press. And I saw Big Cat in the Courier Press last week.
I would say this is the fastest a nickname has ever caught on.
He had a marketing plan.
Yeah.
Can we get real about the Big Cat thing? I remember when Big Cat started, and it was like 4 weeks ago.
Yeah.
And people were sitting there, and they were like, this is funny, it's not going to stick. And then, you know what happened?
You got a tattoo?
Stuck.
It did.
I did get a tattoo. It's real. Here, everybody look, Evansville. Rubbing my tattoo on the mic.
I've had people correct me when I talk. I said something with Josh, and they're like, Big Cat.
Big Cat, yep.
Yeah, I've had people correct me. So
people are either nickname people or they're not.
Yep.
And if they're nickname people, like Big Cat is a hell of a nickname. And when they are nickname people, my boss, Tom Turner from Toroni's, he calls me Big Cat like 7 times a day. He'll be like, it won't even like warrant a nickname, and he'll just be like, Big Cat, I see you drinking that water. I'm thirsty. Because Big Cat's thirsty. He loves it. And then if you're not a nickname person, you're going to be like, isn't his name Josh? This is weird. But you know what? I think Big Cat's here to stay.
I think it is. So do you guys have nicknames for your players? Do you come up with those, or do you guys stick with just like yelling at their last names or something?
To be honest, the nicknames probably help a little bit when we start to forget their names. I think it's easier to remember the nickname.
Right? Hey, tall guy.
There's always something thrown on the end of some names to...
Ian, time out real quick here. You have a beautiful accent.
I think it's the microphone.
I did get that microphone from overseas.
I personally know you from Re-Rock and watching football up there. Will you let everybody know where you're from?
Yep, I'm from Dublin, Ireland, born and raised. Moved to the States when I was 19. Lived in St. Louis for 7 years. 2 years in Springfield, Missouri, and then obviously when Coach Ray took over at the helm of Evansville, got hired on here. So delighted to be in Evansville. Still trying to figure out the twang a little bit and introduce it to my own vocabulary, but
Big Cat will show you the way, baby.
Exactly.
Just got to find the right people, right?
So how long, I guess either one of you can take this, but how long have you been involved with UE's program?
I've been there I was a student there, so I started school in 1995 and played and graduated in 2000, redshirted 1 year, and then worked for the National Park Service for about a year and a half and played for the Nashville Metros when what was then the A-League, which would have been USL Pro League now, and then worked at Springfield, actually at the same college that Ian came from, at Drury University for 4 years, and then went to Duke University for a season, then came back here in 2000.
There was something about you that I liked.
Yeah.
Duke University, that's where it is.
No.
Jason Burton is a Duke fan.
Okay.
Big Cat repeatedly forgives him for that.
Yeah, it should be. But I've been back since 2006 and then took over as the head coach. This will be going into our third season. First week on campus, snuck into Duke, North Carolina at Cameron Indoor Stadium. So an interesting experience, sitting in the bleachers with the
very cool.
Yeah, the camera crazies.
You've been around U of E soccer for how long?
Well, I guess 95 to 2000, 5 years, and then back, so 11, so about 16, 17 years, and I'm 40 years old, so a big part of my life.
How long have you been head coach?
3 years. This will be going into the third season.
Third season.
Yeah.
What were the first two like?
First one was one I'd like to forget, but I'd like to think it also helped us build on the second season.
Yeah.
So we struggled a little bit in our first season. We had 3 wins. That was the first year that Ian was with me as the assistant coach. Last year we were fortunate enough, and I think we had a similar type team, but probably had a little bit more time to work with the group and all of us to get on the same page a little bit, and we're able to get 10 wins last year and make it to the conference semifinals.
That's a pretty good second step there for your second year. Yeah.
Well, it's. I think Ian and I learned how to work together a little bit better. I think our guys, and I'd been a head coach for 2 years at Drury University. At the time, I was 24 years old, which is a world of difference than being a head coach when you've got a little bit more experience under your belt. But still, it was a learning experience for me here at Evansville. I'd been the assistant coach for a long time, but you don't see the same things a lot of times as assistant coach and see what goes on all over the place. So it was a learning experience my first year, but having Ian on staff, and we brought Josh Aldroyd in, who's our other assistant coach from Leeds. He really helped us last season kind of solidify our back line and do some things a little bit better, and we were fortunate to get some wins last year.
So for most American sports fans, soccer is on the peripheral, right? And you've got this small, which I'm a member of, this small sect of American sports fans that are starting to discover European football, soccer. And for me, like as a soccer fan, as a football fan, there's this moment where it clicks. Where I remember trying to figure out what Champions League was and Premier League and the Scottish Premier League, which is different than Premier League. It's a different country and all these different things. And then you gotta like, wait a minute, the playoffs are next year over top of the season, but the playoffs also mean something different over there at the end of the season. But when it clicks and you finally like get this spreadsheet in your mind of how it works, like it's the most beautiful thing in sports. Like soccer is easily I mean, if anything ever happened at the University of Michigan, especially the football program that happened at Penn State,
right,
soccer would easily skyrocket to number one in my life. But college football for now, until like. We're not going to say, but what happened at Penn State happens in Michigan. That'll always be number one. But soccer is it is growing in my life. It grows like I don't know. It's put its roots in, and when it clicks, it really clicks. You get it. You understand like, oh, well, there's a league, and then there's Champions League, which is basically the playoffs for the Supreme Championship, but that's played over in the course of the next season. And then there's also FA Cup and League Cup, and they're 2 different tournaments, and it's crazy. How does college soccer hybridize the game of football from Europe and bring it over here and play it in a format that Americans can understand?
College soccer?
Yeah.
That's a difficult one to explain, especially when college soccer is only 3 months and you look at, European soccer.
I guess I'm really asking like the format of the season. Over here, we're preseason, season, playoff, championship. Everybody take a break. That's how we go over here.
Yeah, and I think if you're going to look at it that way, the college soccer season is very similar to what the American sports fan is used to, and it's probably out of design and necessity because the NCAA is our governing body. And to be honest with you, when soccer was brought about in the mid-'70s, or you can look at some other programs, that were developed or started way before then. But when it became sanctioned by the NCAA, their guidelines and things that they looked at and what they used were it's basketball.
I follow Michigan soccer pretty well, and I plan on being an avid UE supporter from here on out. But I notice it's a lot like basketball. The schedule, it's not for a lot of Evansville listeners that maybe one day, 5 to 10 years from now, are going to be gigantic Manchester United fans. For now, yeah.
I thought we were talking about college soccer, not trying to promote our own agendas here about the teams we support.
Well, you're outnumbered 2-1 to doesn't care. Okay. So, you got a Premier League club yet, Jason?
Oh, it's no.
Yeah, figuring it out.
2-2 Arsenal.
Okay, fair enough. He's an Arsenal guy too.
Go Arsenal.
What I'm trying to say is the schedule, the way it plays out over here, no matter how confusing it is in Europe, it's just like basketball. You got a season, then a conference tournament, and then the big dance, right?
Yeah, it's set up exactly the same. So you're going to look at in our conference this year we're playing. Next year, most likely, the next couple of years, we'll start playing similar to what men's basketball does for the University of Evansville, where they play home and away. Right now, we don't do that. We've got an unbalanced schedule, but we'll play leading up to that non-conference games, which we would refer to in the world of football as friendlies, where they do matter, but they don't matter towards our conference standings. And then we'll get into conference play. Hopefully, for us, finish in the top 2, because if you finish for the top 2, just like every other college sport, except for football, there's a playoff system when we get to the MVC tournament, and if you're in the top 2, you get a bye into the semifinals, which helps you win that conference tournament, which then allows you to get to what everybody wants to do, is get to the big dance, is play the NCAA tournament.
Can I just say something real quick to all the Americans listening, which is pretty much everybody probably?
We're very big in France.
What he just explained is just as complicated as European football, only it's all in a linear format. So I guarantee you, anyone listening was like, "Well, yeah, it makes sense. You got to get into the conference tournament. Win the conference tournament, get the automatic bid to March Madness. March Madness, make first 4 in. Don't make first 4 in. Get a high seed. Advance on the Final Four. Final Four, win. Go to championship, win."
Is that the Kentucky accent?
Who is this guy? I don't know.
All I'm saying is like it's just as complicated. Only American sports are much more linear, aren't they?
Yes.
Start and end. And European football is and this is a UE soccer podcast, right?
Sure.
So we're not going to get too much in the European, but I'm just saying, like,
the beauty I think you're looking for is the fact that they play their season over the course of almost 10 months.
Yep.
And it's drawn out. It's long. It's beautiful. There can be great runs where you go undefeated for 6, 7, 8 games, and then there could be times that even Arsenal or Man United or someone else goes 5, 6, 7 games with 4 ties and a loss. But if you did that in college sports or in our sports world that we live in, you're probably out of the playoffs. But there, you always have an opportunity to try and get back to the top of your league, because it's more, there isn't a real true playoff system for the champion. It'd be similar to baseball. They play all those games, and then at the end of the year, the team that has the best record at the end of the regular season is the champion. There is no playoff.
True.
And I think that puts more onus on that.
I agree.
On those league games.
I agree with that. I've always viewed the Champions League as the European football playoffs. The only wrench in the system is that the playoffs aren't played at the end of the season. They're played over top of the course of the next season, and people just can't wrap their mind around that. Imagine if March Madness was scheduled throughout the course of the next college basketball season, not at the very end. And it's exciting for me. Like I said, when it comes to European soccer, once it clicks, you're just like, you're all in. This is my life now. I have a tattoo. It's small. I'll get a bigger one day. But before it clicks, you're just like, you know what I mean? Like, you just don't. I don't know. Ask an interesting question.
I understand the rivalries in college basketball, let's say. Do you guys have the same rivalries that UE would have in college basketball as in the soccer, or is it a different? Are there different teams, different schools that rub you the wrong way?
No, I mean, I think obviously Creighton used to be one of our biggest rivals because they were in conference until they left, and that was probably similar to basketball. Back before there were conferences, we were in the MCC. While we were independent a lot of the times.
Okay.
Before the 80s, most schools were independent as far as soccer goes, but then the conference started to build up. But our biggest rival back then was Indiana. You know, anytime that we played, it was always regionally. When you got into the NCAA tournament, and Indiana was always a team that had to play Evansville. And there were several times when Evansville went to the Final Four twice in '85 and '90, they beat Indiana in either the Sweet 16 or the Elite Eight to get to the Final Four. So I think that was a real true Midwest rivalry.
Yeah.
And both teams were considered one of the best, or some of the best programs, top 10, 15 in the country at the time. So that's always a big rivalry for us, Butler. So similar schools that you would think geographically for basketball and other sports are big rivals for us. I'd like to get to the point where we're not just playing those teams, but we're competing and beating them like we used to in the past. But that's something that we've got to do to build our program back to where it needs to be. But probably similar to everybody in Evansville. When you think of Evansville basketball, you can probably we don't have Wichita. They don't have soccer at Wichita. Northern Iowa doesn't have soccer. But for the most part, those regional matchups, UK, we play UK every year. Butler's on our schedule. IU's on our schedule every year. So those teams will always play here in Evansville every other year, and we'll play at their place every other year.
Cool.
Ian, I know that in college football, you have two main. I mean, you have a staff of 11 coaches, but you have two main assistant coaches, offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator. What is your role as assistant with the team?
I think we do an awful lot across the board. We don't focus on one area where it would be, I'm going to look after.
Yeah.
This,
with the platoon system in college football, it's very easy to delineate. You'll be over these guys, you'll be over these guys. But in soccer, you got the left back swinging up, crossing the ball into the box, playing offense, and you've got
I didn't understand any of those.
Yeah, you've got your offensive midfielder coming back and covering on defense. So that it's not exactly like college football, where this guy tackles and this guy runs the ball. So, but what do you do?
A little bit of everything. A lot of the time, Marshall will delegate certain tasks. And we do a good job as a staff as well. Josh, he's specifically a goalkeeping coach, but at the same time, he gives a lot of input into what he thinks that we should be doing throughout the season with the other 10 fellas that are on the field. I never dive into the goalkeepers. As far as I'm concerned, keep it out of the net, but I don't understand anything else about
play like David De Gea.
about goalkeeping. But no, to be honest, we do an awful lot as a group, discussions of what we feel needs to be done. And I think we do a good job through training sessions of, Marshall will take something, he'll flip the script and have me take a small segment, but everything we do with the team, rarely do we ever split them up as defenders, forwards. We will when we start to do functional work, but for the most part, I think the philosophy of the way that we play, every player's got to be technically efficient, everybody's got to be tactically efficient, that the small side of games that we play in training bring out an awful lot of our, attacking and defending, that we keep the guys together for the most part.
Yeah, and it's for lack of a better term, he's just as much as a coach or a head coach of the group as I am. And as at the brewery, you've got assistant brewers there, but they do a whole lot of stuff that you do as well. But at the end of the day,
at this point, Merle, I have one assistant brewer, and we're pretty much like co-brewers.
Yeah, exactly. That's the same.
There's a certain part of administration, leadership, and design that go on my plate that aren't on his plate, and that's what makes me head brewer. Same with your head coach.
That would be a good analogy.
Assistant coach, assistant brewer. Geez, we might. It's in terms of the work we put in during the week. Like we might as well just both be brewers or coaches.
Yeah, and I think that's the way it is in our office with all of us. There's no question about it. And at the end of the day, we'll have arguments every once in a while, but we're good enough friends and coworkers that's a good thing. And sometimes we come to a conclusion, but we've got to get to a point where this is what we're going to do. We're both on the same page, and we go and do that. But I feel completely comfortable, and I think he would say the same thing if I wasn't there for a day, 2 days, 3 days, that the same things are probably going to get accomplished as if I was there.
Yeah. I was looking at your roster, and we were kind of talking about this a little bit before Big Cat showed up. You have a lot of it's a mix. You have people from Evansville in the area, like Hopstadt, but then you also have people from outside the country.
Yeah.
How do you recruit people from outside the country to come to Evansville?
Well, I think we've got a pretty good tradition. David Weir, who's now the assistant coach or assistant manager at Nottingham Forest, is probably our most famous alumni. He captained Scotland in the World Cup when they played here in the United States. When the World Cup was here in the United States, he was captain at Everton, which is in the Premier League, captain at Rangers. In the Scottish Premier League, pretty much every team he's been on, he's been the captain of. So, we've got a
He was captain at Rangers?
Yeah.
In the old firm?
Yep.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, that's
soccer nerd nugget.
Go for it. Somebody just freaked out.
Yeah. So he's
for Evansville.
So we've had a long history of having international, especially British players here, Danish guys, Jus Jensen, who played in the '80s, and so I think it's been kind of the fabric of UE's soccer program, but also our campus. I think we try and reach out globally, and we do a good job with that at Harlech's and other things. So we've got a name. overseas for sure as a soccer program, but also a university. And it doesn't hurt. We've always, Coach Schmaltz, who was a Hall of Fame coach here that took our 2 teams to the Final Fours, always had good assistant coaches that were from
He's
Scotland.
also a avid home brewer.
A very good home brewer. But he had assistant coaches during those times that we played well that were from England, and they were able to recruit over there. And he used Harlexton kind of as a home base and went over there a lot before everyone else started recruiting internationally. We got away from that a little bit at Evansville, and it was one of my goals, and one reason, to be honest with you, that I hired Ian, because I knew he had connections in the UK and Ireland and Scotland and England that would help us get some kids from those places. But it was very important for me to start bringing local kids back to our university to play soccer. I wanted to try and keep the best kids here to play for us and help us do the things we wanted to do, but also mix those guys with international guys. And it's not, I wasn't inventing the wheel. I was trying to do the same thing that Coach Schmaltz had done in the 80s and 90s to try and bring success to our program. And we were fortunate to get some really good kids in the first couple of years that we've been that Ian and I have been in charge of the program, and hopefully we can continue to do that moving forward.
That's cool.
In the end, I don't know. It's a good thing that we've got an unlimited data plan at the university, and our phones are supplied to us. Because
that's good.
I don't think he shows me nearly as many YouTube videos as he used to of kids from overseas, because I kind of told him just find the ones that are good and show them. I don't want to see all of them, but I know he spends a lot of time on YouTube and looking at some of those other sites to find kids and find their recruiting videos and things like that, and it really helps us. And we'll find a kid, or he'll find someone, we'll talk about him, and then he'll follow up and try and get game footage and things like that. So technology's changed the game a little bit, but still you want to be able to try and figure out ways to find networks and connections of people that we were fortunate to get the Danish kids just from, Ian found Simon on YouTube, but we had some decent contacts over there from recruiting Freddie, who is a sophomore for us this year that plays in goal. So we were able to kind of follow up with the contacts we made recruiting Frederick and kind of ask about Simon a little bit and get some ins. And so just like anything else, you try and build that network, and people trust you and you trust them, and kind of go from there.
Cool.
Kind of moving on to this season. It's about to start, right? Mm-hmm. One thing I wanted to talk about before we get into the actual, and don't worry, Evansillians, we're not going to do the full schedule breakdown here, but before we get into the actual things we need to know about this season, Dan Bonanno is going to be doing a full-blown tailgate for every home game. That's what I'm understanding.
We officially don't know anything about that.
Okay, cool. I've actually gotten in contact with Dan Bonanno. If you are a soccer fan in Evansville, if you are interested in UE soccer, if you're not a soccer fan in Evansville and you're a UE basketball fan, if you're just interested in something to do on a Sunday or a Monday or a Wednesday afternoon, from talking with Dan Bonanno, he's going to have a full-blown UE tailgate at every game. He said it's going to kick off 2 hours before kickoff.
I think one thing that we've tried to do since taking over the program a little bit is try and make it as much an event as it is a match. I think if you look at any sporting event, that's kind of what happens.
Yeah.
And it's nice for us because it's a beautiful time of the year in Evansville in the fall to be outside and doing things. And
yep.
You can go on and I'm not trying to plug our social media web pages, but you can find UE Men's Soccer on Twitter or Facebook or anywhere else and go back.
But plug it. That's why you're here. Plug the hell out of it. That's exactly why you're here.
I think you can hop on those and you can go back and look at some pictures from the spring matches against Kentucky and at the Mayor's Cup and some other things that we did in the spring, and find out that Dan's done a good job of going all in for the tailgates, and then we've got another family that's going to have an RV at all the games.
He's got
the tailgates. So
he told me he's got cornhole boards in. UE Aces cornhole boards. He texted me. I said, anything I can do to help get this going? He said, should I get cornhole boards? I said, when it comes to tailgating, white people love cornhole. They will play cornhole and they will drink their Diet Pepsi. But I know he'll be out there in the main parking lot 2 hours before every home game. He said he's working with some local chefs and local restaurants. I can't promise every tailgate is going to have like a sponsored meal, but there will be some out there in which there's going to be guys barbecuing up, grilling up, offering their stuff. Local chefs from Evansville, local restaurants from Evansville getting involved just to get their name out there and kind of help a little bit. I'm trying to think what else I'm trying to say. Cornhole, right? Yeah. I love tailgating. My two favorite times to be an American are during baseball season or hockey season, sitting, not even being at the game, but sitting at a bar across the street from the stadium, throwing back a beer, getting excited about going in. And then also in college and pro football, being out in the parking lot under a tent with a grill going and a cooler full of beer. Like it's almost man, I don't want to say it's better than the game itself, but it is almost there. So that tailgate atmosphere will be there at UE games. From what I understand, like I said, Dan Bonanno is going to be putting that on 2 hours before each home game. Bring a 6-pack of beer, throw it on some ice, and come out and just get pumped for this stuff going on. But
yeah, I think what we've had a pretty good tradition of having some tailgates at our games before with parents and some of our local students. But I think that this new regime of parents that are coming in, and I will be honest with you, I think that the American Outlaws have grown tremendously in the last 1.5 to 2 years, and hopefully they're going to be out in support and do that. But I think with those type individuals and the things you've talked about, and there's no question that soccer, I don't know that soccer is growing in Evansville. I think the enthusiasm from the general population for soccer is growing in Evansville, which is a great thing for us, because that means there's going to be more people in the stands. There's going to be more people at Re-Raws and other places watching games like that. And you know as well as I do that any community that's thriving has things and activities for individuals to do. And this is something that I think that, speaking with Dan a little bit about it and other people, and not just Dan, but some of the other parents and some of the students, and our student activities board's been great. And we're going to have a huge official tailgate before our homecoming game against Loyola on October the 14th. And it's going to be a blowout. There's going to be a band in the parking lot before the game. So I think our university's made a concerted effort too to help this be an event. But I think it's important, as we'll get into being a part of a community and who we are and what we want to try and accomplish. We need to do more as a community, provide entertainment opportunities for not only families but for young individuals between the ages of when you graduate from college, 25 to 35, and those are the crowds we're going to kind of cater towards. But our college students want more of that as well. And not just, we always talk about it, and I feel comfortable speaking about it now. As you get older and have kids and you're 40, I don't think all of our college kids want to sit around and drink 25 beers before the game, but they want to be responsible adults and enjoy a nice fall afternoon and be able to watch a sporting event on our campus while feeling the atmosphere that they would at a Big Ten football game or somewhere else. So I think there's going to be a concerted effort to try and put that type atmosphere around some of these tailgates before we kick off.
Big Cat will definitely, he's grown up a little bit. He'll probably only do about 18 beers before the game.
So as someone who doesn't follow soccer or football, don't want to offend, whenever, like, if I watch college basketball or college football, I've watched enough sports in my life like that I can not have to watch the ball. I can watch other things, and I've been told that that's kind of the better way to watch some of these sports. Is this the same in soccer? Would you say? I mean, if I'm here new, do I follow the ball, or is there something better going on that I'm missing out on? If I can focus on something, what should I be focusing on? It's a long way to ask that question.
I think most fans are going to watch the ball. I know I watch a little bit of hockey because I think it's a very similar sort of a sport to soccer in the sense it's transitional. I'm always trying to find the puck, but I can never find it. But I think as soccer coaches, we probably watch what's going around the ball a lot more than we do specifically on the ball. Sure, we get excited about seeing goals scored and stuff like that, but we're also concerned about, while the ball's higher up the field, is our back four in shape, ready to deal with any sort of a counter-attack, and also where we're getting the correct runs and overloads created. So we're, as coaches during games, we're probably watching more what's going on around the play. Me as a fan, watching Man United play against Arsenal.
Beating Arsenal
8-2. I think
Ice
I watch
in his veins.
I think I watch more of the ball, or even more specifically is players that I'm big fans of. Pogba, a lot of times I'll watch him and see what he's doing off the ball. But for the most part, it's going to be watching where the ball is as a fan. So
I think the simplest way to explain the sport of soccer, it's especially in our region. I grew up in Kentucky, and that's why I can make the jokes about the accent and other things.
But I didn't grow up in Kentucky, and I still make those.
I know, but yeah.
So that's fine. Nobody listens to that part. So
but you've got I played basketball growing up in Kentucky, and it's if you look at it and you look at it spatially by the ratio of number of players on the field, it's a very similar sport. You're going to find teams in soccer that want to sit in. You're going to find teams in basketball that aren't going to press high up the court because they might not be as athletic, or they may just not be as good as the other team. So they're going to play a zone and let the other team have the ball around the perimeter and try and beat them from shooting and things like that. In soccer, the same things happen. Typically, the teams that are superior are going to be the teams that press higher up the field because they can take more chances. They've got better players, they're more athletic for whatever reason, so they're going to try and squeeze the other team in their half. Similar in basketball. I was a huge fan of Kentucky basketball growing up, still am. Aces are first, Kentucky second. I had to put that in there, a Duke fan.
How's it feel?
Not great.
But I played at Marshall County, but when Rick Pitino was the head coach at Kentucky, and it was run and gun basketball, and that's similar style that we played at Marshall County, and that probably helped me understand the sport of soccer more so, especially growing up in Kentucky, than anything else. And I think the defensive principles are almost exactly the same. The spacing, how you play, help side defense, things like that. You want to cut the court in half. That's the same in soccer. So there's a lot of parallels if you start to really watch the game and try and forget about the fact it's 120 by 75.
It's very big.
Yeah, and start to really look at it. I think if you know basketball, you can look at the big picture of soccer and start to pick up some similarities real quick.
One thing that, especially what a lot of midfielders and wingers kind of do, remind me of, especially off the ball, like Ian said, wide receivers running routes in football. Because in football, when the ball is snapped, you're so focused on that quarterback in that pocket and them getting hit, you don't really get a good look at what the wide receivers are doing to get open. And at the same time, when a team's pushing up the midfield, for United, when Matic is kind of pushing and everybody's making their runs, or Pogba's pushing it, everybody's making their runs, you're watching them bring the ball up and you're curious what they're going to do with it. And when you get a chance to look at a replay, the same way in the NFL, you'll watch a wide receiver make a cut and just break some cornerback's ankles when the ball's nowhere even near and then get open. You can kind of see those wingers, midfielders, and forwards make their movements and cut their lines that same way. It's the exact same thing for me.
Is there the style that you coach as are the assistant coaches on board with that style, or is that something that you guys?
They better be.
Yeah, I mean, I know they better be, but
no, that's to be honest with you, that's the reason I hired Ian. You know, because I think he was the assistant coach for a good friend of mine, and we've spent a lot of time talking about soccer and how we want to play. And he told me Ian was similar, and I got to know Ian before I hired him. Obviously, it's a small world in the soccer world, but it'd be a struggle. Sometimes you want to have some differences, and we do a little bit. I don't. Ian does a good job of focusing on set pieces. I think they're important. He's a little bit more detail-oriented on those, and it probably helps us because that makes me have to deal with it more, which is a good thing. So we have some differences there, but I'd say fundamentally on how we see the game and how we want to play, it's pretty similar. I want kids that I don't care if you're 6'4" or 5'3", you've got to be able to do certain things with the ball to be able to play in our system how we want to play. And it's not that we're not going to thump the ball long, but we're going to try and play a style where the ball's on the ground and we're entertaining, we keep it moving. And I want everyone to walk out of the stadium when they watch our teams play and say, 1, we competed, 2, we tried to play the right way, and 3, we left it all on the field and played hard.
Right.
So very rarely are we going to, I tell our guys all the time, we're going to spend the first 10 or 15 minutes trying to play the way that we want to play. And if we're in a game that we can't do that, then we're going to go to plan B pretty quick, because I'm not going to try and sit there and be stubborn. I did that when I was 24 at Bradley, and we lost 6-0. So you learn from those things. At some point, if it's not working, we've got to change it. But we're going to go into a match and try and dictate ourselves on that game. And if it doesn't work, we'll go to plan B. But very rarely you're going to see us start a match where we're sitting in and just trying to lump the ball up to the other end of the field and keep the other team from scoring. We want to try and score, do what we can.
You want to create.
We
You're
want
here to create. Yeah.
Well, and I'm an Arsenal fan. I'm a Wenger fan. There's no question about it. And I see, without getting too philosophical, I see the sport of soccer similar to how I probably see life. And I want to enjoy it, and I want to be expansive, and I want to have fun with it. I don't want to sit back and just protect myself all the time and sit in my corner. So it's similar to how we're going to try and play. And Ian can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think he probably sees it the same way.
It's okay. It's a safe place, Ian. You can.
Two quick questions about the Valley. Number one, I guess is more of a statement for purposes of recording and getting this out to the people. I saw a press release the other day. ESPN3, which is like ESPN's WatchESPN, like online and app, and their online streaming service is carrying quite a bit of your games, aren't they?
Yeah, we'll carry pretty much any home game unless there's a conflict with volleyball. So we've got to take that into account a little bit. But I didn't look at it, to be honest with you. But I think
it blew my mind. I was looking at it today, and I was like, I bet they'll probably carry a couple. And there was like 12 or 13 UE soccer games that if you can't make it to the game, if you're stuck at home, if you got kids and one just vomited on the other one, and you got to clean them up, you could throw the laptop up on the counter and stream the game. But ESPN3. is carrying a lot of it. The next question is the Valley. How does the conference structure work as far as what us soccer fans we call the table, the standings? Is it 3 points for a win, 1 for a draw, 1 for a loss? I know a little bit ago the Big Ten switched from win-loss to 3-1-0, which for most people in Europe, the league structure is if you play a team on the league in the league, 3 points for a win, 0 for a loss, and then if the two teams draw, which we know is a tie, each team gets 1, and that third point is lost. Do you guys operate the same way?
Yeah, we do the same thing in our conference standings. I think you'll see that most soccer conferences now do that as well. So 3 for a win, and it's really, some teams, it's up to them, but, some teams play for ties. There's no question about it. But, 3 points is a lot better than 1. It puts you in a lot better situation. So I think that's the reasoning behind it. Instead of going for wins and losses, it's to encourage a little bit more attack-oriented soccer.
Yeah, you don't want that. You don't want that win to come because you won on PKs, which essentially is a fun skills competition. You want the win to come because you beat them strategically.
And there's no, that's one thing that Americans have a struggle with. There's no question about it, is that we can finish games in ties. College soccer's done everything they can to avoid that because we go into 2 overtime periods, which for me, and I've talked about it in our conference meetings. I've talked about it in our NCAA meetings and things like that. For as condensed as our season is, to put our kids through 2 more overtime periods on a Wednesday night and then have to come back on a Friday, I just don't see a use in it. I would love to see us go to just 90 minutes, and if you're tied, you're tied. Some people disagree with me, but I think it's probably, most of the time, I don't know the percentages of it, but I think most of those games typically end up in ties anyway. So really what you've done is put your college-age students through
for the risk of injury.
For the risk of fatigue. Yeah, that's why I'm talking about injury and everything else. For the entertainment value, I completely understand why they do it.
Right.
But a tie is a tie. You get a point. And sometimes a tie is a very good result in soccer. I think you've watched enough to know that. There's no question about
10
it.
years. 10 years a Premier League fan. 8 as an Arsenal fan, and then the last 2 is Man United. It's the best decision ever made.
I'm liking you even more, or even less. The more we sit here.
Marrying my wife, buying the big house in downtown I did, and becoming a United fan are the 3 best decisions I've ever made in my life.
Well, there's still room on the Duke bandwagon, so
no, not happening.
Make a 4th best decision.
Not happening. Sorry.
Oh gosh.
I do have one thing. When you're ready to wrap up, let me know. I do have one thing to do that's very important.
This scares me.
I was filling it through his pocket there.
Yeah,
I was
don't
doing
know,
that.
Why is some stuff orange on the schedule online?
Oh,
It's a classic.
Yeah, that's our Pro-Rehab Aces Classic. It's actually one of the longest-running college soccer tournaments in the United States. So Pro-Rehab has been a great sponsor of it for, I should know this, and Pat Wimpy's going to get upset with me that I don't, but I was playing there in 95 and 6, and it was the Pro-Rehab Classic. So it's been the Pro-Rehab Classic for a long time. But it's a good chance for us to bring, typically 3 pretty good teams into town and a full weekend of soccer for any college soccer fan. But now, as the sport's growing, for any soccer fan to come out and watch not only the Aces play, but 3 other teams throughout the course of the weekend. We have a nice luncheon at the Fifth Third building downtown to kick that off at noon. So it's become a real staple in not only our soccer community, but I think if you talk to any of the visiting coaches that come in, one of the reasons they come is how well and professionally it's ran. That's all because of the efforts of Pro-Rehab and the Fifth Third Bank to make it a special event for us.
Cool. Keep coming from a different sport perspective. I apologize for that. Maybe
I think
next year I'll be
a lot of people listening are going to relate.
I think it's the easiest way to understand the sport.
So college basketball, they always are tweaking the rules to get more offense because the coaches always find some loophole and makes it terrible to watch. Is the same in soccer where they're always trying to increase scoring, or are they kind of trying to leave? I mean, you kind of touched on that with the overtime rules, I guess, but is there anything like that going on where they like, all right, no more of this or no more of that?
Yeah, I mean, the offside rules consistently changing. Typically it used to be if you're beyond the defender and the ball's played, the flag's up, the whistle's gone, you're offside. The
last defender.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Second to last.
Second to last defender.
If you include the goalkeeper.
Not including the goalkeeper. Guys on the field, if you're behind the last man.
Okay, so this rule drives me nuts while I'm watching.
It's just
Since
like-
This is the number one reason Americans aren't soccer fans.
because
They
the
just
guy
don't get it.
gets past the guy, he beats the guy, and he's like, well, how is that wrong?
It's just like icing.
Yeah, I hate that too.
Yeah, it's a similar. Well, it was actually created to score more goals because
Really?
before offsides, teams would just
punt.
Just cherry picking or whatever you want to call it. Yeah.
Well,
So now
not even cherry picking in mind. Teams would just punt it down the field to keep it out of their own end. The same way in hockey, icing keeps the defender from just chucking the puck on the
end. It gives space to attack him behind the other team.
Kicking as far as you can and get. Okay, I got you.
It's interesting. We're the only, and again, this is getting on my soapbox a little bit probably, but we're the only Division I sport that has different rules in the first half than the second half because of re-entry rules. It's a participation sport. The NCAA is a participation league to start.
Yeah.
You know, and it's gravitated away from that obviously, and it's starting to in all sports. But we have unlimited substitution, which is different than anywhere else in the world. So we can play.
Typically, it's 3, right?
Yeah.
You got 3 dudes, and then you're done.
Yeah. So typically, I mean, it's a sport that you have to be intelligent enough to figure out how to play 90 minutes because you probably not going to get subbed off, except for a few key areas of injuries.
My fat ass probably going to make about 4.5 minutes. So you be subbing me off quick.
But in college, there's unlimited. You know, our conference limits the roster at 22 for conference games, so effectively you can only play 22. But realistically, in a non-conference game, you could play basically whatever you have on your bench if you want.
You're trying to say on a non-conference, Big Cat could get in for 4.5 minutes.
I'd put you on the field. There's no question about it.
Okay, good deal.
You could have some eligibility
Just for intimidation.
You're going to be amazed at how many sponsors I have on my jersey.
But when you come out in the first half, you can't go back in.
Okay.
If you come out in the second half, you can go back in once. So we have a different set of substitution rules from half to half.
I didn't even know about that. That's wild.
Yeah, it is interesting. And you'll see some, if you come to our matches, it'll be interesting. We sub, and obviously you're going to sub a little bit more freely in the beginning of the year because of the fitness issues.
Yeah.
Towards the end of the season, you're probably, you know, if we're using 15 to 16 guys, that's a lot for a match, to be honest. Okay. We're usually 11 starters and then probably 3 to 4 subs max, depending on what's happening. But situations, you do different things. But some teams in our conference, they're using the full allotment of 22 players, and it's a difficult game to be a part of because you don't really get that ebb and flow and get the rhythm of the match and things like that. There's a lot of substitutions. You know, I think a lot of coaches are trying to get that where it's, you know, I don't think we're ever going to get it to where it's just 3 subs, but we'd like it to be consistent from the first half to the second half.
Sure. That's crazy. It's not the same rules for both halves.
But it does make it to be, as a fan, it makes it more exciting because the game realistically is a faster paced game because you've got fresher legs on it. So it probably creates a little different viewing than it would be watching some other match. But I'm trying to think of other rules.
The whole first half, second half thing further bolsters my opinion of I have this theory that one day God and Jesus and whoever invented soccer all got together and they were like, is there any way we could make this as complicated as possible? And I think that it makes me feel better about that theory. That's all I'm saying.
It gives it credence, I suppose. I don't think there's too many other rules. Obviously, we used to have an old athletic director here, assistant athletic director that went to Illinois State, and we'd always joke about it when he was walking in the hall. He said, why don't they just put 2 balls out there? That way we'd get more goals. So I think there's some players like that and some general fans that think, you know, when you go into overtime, you should take a player off and add a ball. Right. You know, so that's just, I think, some of the general fans and what they want to see. Because at the end of the day, it's just like you want to see home runs, you want to see the ball in the back of the net, you want to see slam dunks, you want to see half-court shots.
Look at the beginning of the Premier League season this year. I got off early on Friday last week for Arsenal-Leicester, 4-3 with a last-minute super sub header from Giroud. It was an unbelievable game. It rivaled any American sport I could watch.
No question about it.
I remember about 3 or 4 years ago, U.S. men's national team was playing a friendly against Canada. I got my dad to watch with me. It ended 0-0. Like, that's just tough. That's a tough product to sell to anybody. If the NFL ended 0-0, if hockey, if basketball, even if basketball ended 10-10, like, when you're balls deep into it and you really love it, you get it. That's like 5% of us. When you include soccer fans and people thinking about getting into soccer and people marginally like, maybe I might watch it one day, 5% of us are like, 0-0 draw, we'll take it. That's a point. Everyone else is like, this is garbage.
Well, and
so
I think
how do you combat that?
Well, I think it's like anything else. The no-hitter is wonderful, right? It's a beauty. It's an unbelievable thing that you rarely see. I think there's been several, and I'm not going to be able to rattle them off the top of my head, 0-0 soccer games that I walk away and say, man, that was one of the best soccer matches I've ever seen. Because there are guys that are getting after it. There are guys that are, you know, going forward and attacking. But on the flip side of it, there's guys that are defending just as well. So,
but no hitter's still in 1-0 at least, not 0-0. And that's something as devil's advocate from an American sports fan's perspective. Like, I get what, as a decade-long football fan, I get that. Like,
well, that's just like when you're watching the football game and the score's 9-6, and it ends that way.
I love it. No, my dad and I are totally different. Michigan football, I cheer harder for a sack than I do a touchdown. I love a good 14-10 win. At the same time, there was at least 3 touchdowns in that span to celebrate or commiserate, and that's just the one thing that people need to.
Who's that keeper you just mentioned from United? What was his
David De
name?
Gea.
Okay. You don't get excited when he makes big saves to keep the ball at the back of the net for that 0-0 win?
Absolutely. I'm just talking about the body of the game. When you give yourself to something for 90 minutes, which soccer is actually one of the shortest. Soccer's right there with college basketball. It's a little under 2 hours. It's wonderful. My wife is totally on board.
Well, and the beauty of it is, especially when you're watching, and our games are similar because you're going to know what you get into regardless, but the clock doesn't stop. It's going to be 90 minutes. And there's not we're talking about professional soccer now. There's not an overtime. So
I completely and totally get what you're saying from a soccer fan's perspective, but I'm just saying how can soccer and soccer fans, especially fanatics like myself and coaches and people deeply involved, combat the idea that my dad would walk away from a game thinking, well, nothing happened.
Well, I think how did you first fall in love with the sport that you love?
USA.
Well, not even soccer, football. How did you fall in love with football?
Freudian, my father.
Seeing it live, in person?
No. So when I was young, my dad always used to, my first introduction to sport, and this is some good content. You're getting Big Cat's like the reason why he's alive right now. Yeah. My father and I used to help my dad when I was younger cut the grass at our house out on the north side, and we'd come in. We always had to be done by 11 because back then, damn it, Michigan played at 11 on ABC, and Keith Jackson called the games. And Dad would always make bologna, ketchup, and mustard sandwiches. And we'd eat those sandwiches, and we'd sit there and we'd watch Michigan football because the work week was done for him, and the grass was cut, and the yard work was done, and we could now enjoy our Saturday night and Sunday.
So you'd say football was ingrained in your culture?
Yeah, entirely.
I'd say Ian would probably have a very similar perspective in Europe, and I think what you're seeing here, especially in cities like we're just now getting to the point where people that actually grew up playing the sport now have children.
Yep. Okay.
We just now have a professional
This is
league.
the exact answer I'm trying to get out of you right now.
We just now have a professional league that is it started in 1995. Is getting to a point where it's actually matured into the point where there are fan bases in those cities.
They get just as many people at Seattle Sounders games as they do for Seattle Seahawks. It's wild.
Yeah. You just saw last night, and I'm sure that, everyone watched the U.S. Open Cup. Not everyone, but most of the soccer fans in our city and around here with FC Cincinnati playing the New York Red Bulls. And for everyone that doesn't know, FC Cincinnati's in the league below, which is the USO Pro, but they were able to go into overtime, actually, because they're in the playoff setting, so there was an overtime, and lost 3-2, but there were 30,000 people at that stadium. In Cincinnati, I don't look at stats too often, but I can't imagine the Reds had 30,000 people at a baseball game anytime recently. So I think the sport's growing in that fashion. I think what you're going to find is most of the time people love watching the game because they enjoyed seeing it live, playing it when they grew up, and having is visceral the right word I'm looking for? They could touch, feel, and smell it.
Yeah.
And in order to actually grow an appreciation for something, you have to do those things. So I'm not, for us as the University of Evansville men's soccer program in our community, we are the highest level of soccer you're going to see. And I would like to think we're going to be fairly competitive.
I hope so.
But you're going to see, we played Portland here last year. That made it pretty deep into the NCAA tournament. We played SIUE last year at home that made it to the Sweet 16 at the NCAA tournament. We tied both of those teams, and we were up 2-0 against Portland and gave up a penalty kick late to tie it, and went through overtime and tied. We hit one off the post in overtime against SIUE. So we're going to play teams at that Division I level that are at the top tier of college athletics, and to have the opportunity to have young kids come out and feel and smell and see that, and parents, and to help us do those things to make this full circle and come back to the tailgating and making it an event. We do that to draw more people in, and hopefully once they come into the stadium and sit in the stands and watch the game, they start to see the big picture. Because on TV, you can't see everything like we were talking about before.
It's fun. It is.
When you're sitting at
I can't get to Old Trafford for all 38 Manchester United Premier League games. Actually, I've never been there ever, so I appreciate the TV. But you're very right. Live it's a whole different beast.
And we've got one of the best college soccer stadiums in the country. And I don't say that because I played there and worked there. I say that because we've traveled around and seen a lot of them. It's the field's unbelievable, but you sit in the best place to watch a soccer game, regardless of what level, is higher up because you can see everything moving.
Just like hockey.
Yeah, just like hockey. You want to, because that way you can see everything develop. And A-Rod McCutcheon Stadium, because of the way the stadium's set up, you're already 15 feet off the ground, higher than the field. So you can literally, especially if you sit at the top of the stadium, you can see everything develop on the field. You can see the whole pitch. So it's just a great environment to watch the game in.
I love the example you gave of the extra sensory, though, because I know that we had that freak cool late week or freak cool weekend a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
And I was sitting on my porch having coffee on a Friday, or I think it was a Friday morning before I went to work. It was like 59 degrees outside, and I could smell college football in the breeze.
Well,
it makes a lot of sense.
I know exactly the day you're talking about, and my experience for that is me walking onto the soccer field.
Yep, taking the pitch with the boys.
Yeah.
Well,
do it. One more question. Just hear me out. Stealing from the big three. What do you guys think for having like a 3-point shot from a good distance away? I mean, it increases scoring, a little excitement.
That's funny.
No, you need to come out, and all our training sessions are open.
Yeah.
We have activities and training that encourage guys to shoot from further out, so they get extra points for things.
There you go. I'm saying,
and I think you could be, Jason, with the connections and the network and the listeners you have. I would love to champion the 3-point goal for college soccer.
He looks like a defensive midfielder,
with you heading it up. I would
way out of shape. Defensive midfielder.
I would put him more as a Kaká type player.
Okay.
I take great offense to that. Yeah. I have no idea what just happened.
3-point shots coming to college soccer 2022. You heard it first.
It's his platform.
I did want to give you something. So you keep looking in my pocket.
You're
I'm very scared.
So most people that don't know, most people don't know this. And I'll say this in the most flattering way possible. Big Cat here is the master brewer at Taroni's Main Street Brewery. We have 3 locations in Evansville, Main Street Brewery, Forget Me Not In, which is, we might as well call ourselves neighbors over there, right?
There's no question about it.
And as well, Newburgh, out on Bell Oaks by the movie theater getting renovated now. And Marshall here has been a faithful supporter of the beer I brew. So we've recently gone through a rebrand of our IPAs. Moosehead Ales and Lagers has took it upon themselves to try and sue every single brewery in the United States that use the image of a moose in their beer, which is unreal to me, but it's always safe to play by the rules, so we're going to respect Johnny Law. We've gone through a rebranding, but one of our biggest Blue-Eyed Moose fans of all time has been Marshall Ray. Yeah. And I wanted to give you, this is one of the last Blue-Eyed Moose IPA taps in circulation, and that goes in your man cave. So
that's, you don't know... I'm speechless to be honest.
Yeah, that's from not only myself. That's from Tom Turner. That's from everybody at Taroni's, all your friends there. And so, just keep up the good work with UE Soccer. Thank you for everything you do for Evansville and for U of E. And thank you for all the beer you've drank, which isn't, if his wife's listening, is not that much. But all of my beer that I made there, I guess it's Jerry Turner's beer that I made. And your support, man. I want you to have that, and Tom wanted you to have that, and that's just the thing we were going to do.
Well, I truly appreciate it, and I've talked a little bit about our community and things, moving forward. But partnerships are wonderful, and Taroni's has been a great partner to UE men's soccer forever. It's kind of been our clubhouse when I played there after games, and finishing up my last year there after botany class on Friday. I always ended up at Taroni's to have pizza and lunch with a few guys and our professors. So it's always been part of the UE experience for me. But they've also stepped up their game in the last few years and have been proud sponsors of.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, been proud sponsors of UEFC, which is our supporters group in town, which is helped us do a lot of tremendous things. For anyone that joins that, they get 20 free Taroni's bucks to go there. And so I appreciate everything that Taroni's has done for us. And you tell Tom, thank you very much.
I'm going to play this for him when it comes out, probably next week sometime, or this weekend, or.
Well, this means a lot to me, and it will definitely go. And
it's our pleasure, and our pleasure, and keep up the good work.
All right, thank you so much, Jason. Appreciate it tonight as well.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Anytime.
Good job, everybody.